Well, now we are going to do a very interesting topic and a very important one too. All of you will have to put your child in some school or the other for admission, isn't it? When you go from one place to another, or when you go from one country to the other, you have to go and ask for admission. But nowadays it is not that very easy for admission. They immediately ask the parents to come for an interview, be it LKG or higher secondary plus one. They always ask the parents to come first. They will check the parents how capable they are in training the children, and then only go in for they will think about giving an admission. Okay. So, now we are going to see how the parents are interviewed for a child who is going to join LKG. I am sure that will be very useful for you, because all of you will have children and they may have to go to school. Okay, shall we see? So, this is at the interview for school admission. Okay. An interview for school admission. This is not the interview for the child, that is another interview we will be doing next. Now, this is the interview for the parents, okay, for school admission. Okay, first the parents come in. Mr. Ramesh. Excuse me, madam. May we come in? So, he has come with Mrs. Ramesh. Mr. and Mrs. Ramesh have come and they are entering the principal's room. Now, the principal says, what will the principal say? Yes, come in. And because they are parents, the principal says, please be seated. First he introduces his wife to the principal. This is Vasanti, my wife, or this is my wife Vasanti, and we have come for a child admission in LKG. Okay, so the principal now asks the father, Mr. Ramesh, what do you do? That means she wants to know where he is working and what his designation is. Well, Mr. Ramesh, what do you do? That is, what do you do for a living? Where he is working? And Mr. Ramesh says, you can even say, where are you working? Okay, what do you do or where are you working? It can be asked in any way. I am the assistant manager in Infosys. Okay. And then the principal immediately asks, if he is the assistant manager, how long does he spend, how many hours does he spend with the child, she wants to know. Well, how many hours do you spend with your child? Every day. How many hours do you spend with your child every day? Because managers and assistant managers, the principal thinks that he may not have much time to spend with the child. He'll be busy with his office work, she thinks. So, Mr. Ramesh answers, I spend at least 2 hours with my child every day. Then the principal asks Mrs. Ramesh, Mrs. Ramesh, what is your qualification do you also work or do you work? Do you work somewhere? And Mrs. Ramesh doesn't work anywhere. She's a homemaker. What do you mean by homemaker? A housewife. Okay, we usually don't say housewife. So, we just say homemaker, because even a mother who is going to stay at home has so much to do, isn't it? So, homemaker we call them. Mrs. Ramesh's name is Vasanti, but I have just written here as Mrs. Ramesh. Okay, she says, I have finished I have a degree in chemistry. That is BSc chemistry. And I am a homemaker. That means housewife. The principal asks again. She wants to know who spends time in teaching the child. Who would help the child in studies? And Mrs. Ramesh says, I would help my child every day. In her work. So the principal is quite happy. So she says, bring your child tomorrow for an interview, because first the interview is for the parents and the next day it is for the child. Okay. Bring your child tomorrow for an interview if she is found eligible you can admit her. And Mr. and Mrs. Ramesh thank you madam, and they get up and go. Okay. So this is just a model interview of a principal and between a principal and Mr. and Mrs. Ramesh, the parents of a child. Okay, and they are just being interviewed for a child's admission in LKG. Shall we see now? This is an interview for school admission. I am going to read out, follow it now. Mr. Ramesh: excuse me madam, may we come in? Principal: yes, come in please be seated. So, actually parents will be waiting outside the principal's room. She will ring the bell. As soon as she rings the bell, the attender will let the parents to come in, and this is how you should, when you enter, you cannot simply enter like that. You should say, excuse me madam, may we come in? And the principal will always say, yes, come in, please be seated. She won't make you stand and she won't interview, she will always make you sit. Mr. Ramesh says, this is Vasanti, my wife, and we have come for a child's admission in LKG. So, the principal should know the purpose of the parents' visit, isn't it? In between, someone else also can walk in. So, they are telling the purpose of their visit. This is Vasanti, my wife, and we have come for our child's admission to, or her child's admission in LKG. And the principal says, well, Mr. Ramesh, where are you working? And Ramesh says, I am the assistant manager in Infosys. Now, actually, he could have said, I am an engineer and I am working as the assistant manager in Infosys. We can even add on here, I am an engineer. Okay, I am an engineer and I am the assistant manager in Infosys. Principal, good. Well, how many hours do you spend with your child every day? This is not only for looking into the lessons, even otherwise if it is a 1-year-old child or 2-year-old child, how long the father spends some quality time with the child, she wants to know, because that is very, very important for a child's growth. Not only physically, mentally also, the child needs both the parents to be there at home to show their concern and care. So, the principal is asking, how many hours do you spend with your child every day? And Mr. Ramesh says, I spend at least 2 hours with my child every day. So, only 2 hours he is able to spend, that itself is a great thing. Because nowadays parents do not have time for their children only. It is always a rat race. The father is going to work, mother is going to work, and the children, poor little children, they are brought up by grandparents or by the servant maid, and they long for that quality time with their parents. So, he says he spends 2 hours with his child every day. The principal asks, Mrs. Ramesh, now she turns to Vasanti and asks, Mrs. Ramesh, what is your qualification? Do you work somewhere? So, she wants to know whether she is also working somewhere. And Mrs. Ramesh says, I have a degree in chemistry, that is, she is BSc chemistry, and I am a homemaker. So, she says that she is a housewife, she does not go to work and she is a homemaker. Okay. And the principal says, who would help the child in studies? So, if the father comes and spends 2 hours every day and the mother is at home, so who is going to help the child in her studies? Mrs. Ramesh says, I would help my child every day in her work. So, that is a guarantee that the school wants. There should be someone to follow up whatever the child is learning at school. The child may learn so many things in school. So, all that the parents should also check whether they are learning, what they are learning, all that they have to check. So, that is the evaluation that the parents should do. So, she wanted to know whether the child would be helped at home, and Mrs. Ramesh gives a guarantee, I would help my child every day in her work. And the principal is quite satisfied now. So, she says, okay, bring your child tomorrow for an interview. If she is found, full stop here, If she is found eligible, you can admit her. Now, what is this eligibility? That is, the child should open her mouth and speak, whether she is confident enough to answer the questions to which the principal asks, and whether she has any prior knowledge of alphabets and numbers and all that. That is what the principal wants to know. So, that is the eligibility. So, Mr. and Mrs. Ramesh, they just stand up and say, "Thank you madam," and they leave. Okay? So, this is just a model interview for school admission between parents and the principal of a school.